Welcome to the iZone with me, Jag Singh, on Gateway 97.8. I would like to thank everyone who has shown their support through their kind messages and stories through the social media. Thank you. Every now and again, an individual comes along who notices that something isn't right. The history books show us Abraham Lincoln, Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King were amongst these people. They saw something wasn't right and then did everything in their power to make a change for the betterment of mankind. Today I'm privileged to have such a person in the Gateway Studios with me, a man who saw that something just wasn't right and fair, and he took action and formed an alliance that will take on the British government in order to make a long-lasting positive change. This man stood alongside the well-known British actress Joanna Lumley and fought for the right for Gurkhas to reside in the United Kingdom. Peter Carroll, thank you so much for coming down to the Gateway Studios today.
It's a real pleasure. Nice to see you.
Brilliant, excellent. So Peter, first of all, can you please tell me and the people out there your involvement with the British government, please?
Well, for quite a large part of my life, I always wanted to be a Member of Parliament. I don't know why, what sin I'd committed in a previous life to want to be a Member of Parliament, but ever since being a small boy on my father's knee, I always wanted to be an MP. I can remember it back to being 6 or 7. So I've always had a big interest in politics, and later on in life I decided to have a proper attempt at becoming an MP and went to Folkestone down on the south coast to take on somebody who's still very famous, Michael Howard. At that time he was a backbench MP, perhaps past the peak of his career, and I went down there and worked really, really hard to take him on. Sadly that didn't come off. It's one of the campaigns I haven't won. That's how life is sometimes.
That's okay, you can't win them all, that's right, Pete.
But in the course of being the candidate in Folkestone, I came across a story which shook me to the core. Some very brave people came to see me, almost by chance. They were 4 retired British Army Gurkha soldiers. And they came to see me because one of their friends had been arrested and was being threatened with deportation. And I thought, well, what's he done wrong? What terrible crime could he have committed to be threatened with deportation? He'd actually been locked up in the Dover deportation centre. And when I questioned these 4 recently retired soldiers, they said, well, he hasn't committed a crime. He just wants to work in Britain as a security guard or a bus driver. I just couldn't get my head around it. I just could not understand. So I started to research the subject. And I found out that even though Gurkhas had worked and served and fought in the British Armed Forces for nigh on 200 years.
For our country as well, yeah?
Yeah. They fought all over the world. Hundreds of thousands had been wounded, tens of thousands killed. Just in the Second World War, I think there were 43,000 Gurkha fatalities. Wow. They'd been in the Falklands, they'd been in the Gulf War. My dad had talked to me about them when I was a child, saying that if you ever thought about valour and bravery and loyalty and service and dedication and love of a country, then the Gurkhas were the very embodiment of that. But even though all of these things were well known, no retired Gurkha soldier had the right to stay in Britain when they'd done their time in the army. Even if they'd won medals, whatever they'd done, however long they'd served, wherever they'd served, they all had to go back.
That wasn't right, was it, Pete? That's not right.
Well, I thought it was jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't doubt the sincerity of the 4 people that came to see me, but I wondered if they got it right.
Yeah.
Could this be right? So after a very short amount of research, it came to light that they were indeed correct, and that this chap, his name was Tej Limbu, and despite all that followed on from this, I've never actually met Tej Limbu. I think he works in the Middle East now, but that was the spark, if you like, that set the bonfire off of the Gurkha Justice Campaign. And
that's what made you sit back and think, wait a minute, this ain't right.
Well, it's not right. I mean, my view is that if somebody's prepared to put on our uniform for our armed forces to defend our country and our family and our way of life, then to me that means they're of us. That they have every right to live with us as fellow citizens. Now, when I questioned this, I was quoted all sorts of legal agreements and immigration rules and regulations and laws. All going back to the 1947 tripartite agreement.
Okay.
Absolute, gripping document that was. And I understood that the rules said it was wrong, but if the rules say they're wrong and you know in your heart and morally that it's right, it means the rules are wrong. And so we set off, clumsily at first, didn't really know how to do it. I remember trying to contact the BBC. I had to look up the phone number to ring the BBC switchboard. And after several frustrating hours, I actually managed to get through to the Jeremy Vine show.
Persistence one a day.
And we got on the Jeremy Vine show, the Daily Express. They gave us 3 front pages. I went to see Charles Kennedy, who at that time was leader of the Lib Dems. He took it very seriously. And we just started to build that enormous grassroots support. Because when people in Britain found out that this was the case, they were absolutely horrified.
I was just about to say, Peter, I don't think people were aware. It was just a pattern. You went out there, you was a Gurkha, you fought for the country, and you went back to Nepal. I mean, people weren't even aware, were they, until you actually highlighted it?
No, they weren't aware. And that's why very early on I realised the power of media. Once you get the media to spread the message, it touches people all over the world. At the height of the campaign, the postman actually, he looked like a gorilla because his arms had stretched, because we were getting sackloads of mail, not just from Britain, but from Hong Kong, from Cyprus, from America, from Australia, from New Zealand. People saying, my dad, my uncle, my granddad served with these people. How could this happen? It's an absolutely amazing response.
Excellent, amazing, Peter. Thank you very much. Next we have Every Little Step, Bobby Brown.
Your day, your say, your way. Basildon and East Thurrock's brighter sound. Gateway 97.8.
So, Peter, while you was campaigning for the Gurkhas and you got this extreme, massive media support, I've heard a story that an anonymous person came up to you and gave you a hint about and whispered to you to contact Joanna Lumley. I mean, this is true? Did that really happen?
It is true, and I think it's a great story for anybody who's listening who wants to put something right, who wants to fight a campaign. Because one of the great things about campaigning is that you never know what's going to happen, what chance will occur, what opportunity, what offer of help from an unexpected source might come. But picture the scene. We've been fighting for years. We've made some progress. We've got huge public support. The media support's building.
Massive petitioning. Yeah.
We've got this brilliant firm of lawyers called Howe & Co from West London, absolutely inspirational lawyers who dedicated themselves to this cause, certainly as much as me, maybe more. They were on it. They were defending Gurkhas in immigration tribunals, in the courts, trying to get round the system to get them in. And we built up to the point where we were going to go to the High Court in London in September of 2008.
And that was achievement in itself to get to that position.
An enormous one, an enormous achievement. And our hopes were riding high that the case might go our way. Excuse me, but 2 weeks before that, I was doing a street petition in a small village in Kent called Cranbrook. And a lady said, I'll sign it. Signed it and said, but you know, you're doing really well with this, Pete, but you need somebody famous to help you. Why don't you try Joanna Lumley?
Wow.
And off she went. I thought nothing of it, but I think it was the Saturday evening. I was watching the TV. I got bored. I thought, do you know that lady? She said that. Why did she say that? What's the link? So I researched Joanna's story, excuse me, about her father serving with the Gurkhas at the end of the Second World War in the Far East. And I sat down on the computer. And again, I think the moral of this story is that you just don't give up.
That's it, yeah.
Just keep fighting. I didn't know how to contact Joanna Lumley. The lawyers gave me an email address, which I think was probably the one that worked, but I researched off the internet maybe 50 people I thought might know her. And we sent the emails out, and 3 weeks later, the phone rang, and it was Joanna Lumley.
Wow, brilliant. Excellent, Peter. Excellent. Next, we have a classic tune from the Bollywood film Karma, Dil Diya Hai Jaan Bhi Denge. You're listening to the iZone on Gateway 97.8, and Peter's advice to you guys out there listening, don't give up.
Basildon and East Thurrock's brighter sound from the heart of Eastgate. Gateway 97.8.
If you have just joined us, you're listening to the iZone, and my special and honourable guest today is Peter Carroll, the man who fought for British law to be changed to allow Gurkhas who were fighting for our country the right to reside with their families in the United Kingdom. Now, Peter, back to Joanna very quickly. I mean, I've always been a fan of Joanna. absolutely fabulous. Sapphire and Steel. My personal favourite, the 70s classic Avengers. Oh, sorry, I just got to do this. Sorry, Pete, I just had to do that. How was it like working alongside Joanna?
It was really wonderful. I remember the first time I spoke to her on the phone. Even that was a story. I'd gone to a little chef on the A1 to have my Olympic breakfast, and I came out, and the car phone answer service, because I had a car phone bolted into the car, pinged up with 3 messages, and the first one was a lady complaining about rats on the allotments in Folkestone, because I was a local councillor at the time. And the second one was a lady complaining about benefits, so she couldn't fill the forms in. And the third one was just a strange voice that said, "I think you want to get in touch with me, call me on this number." And I actually thought, how annoying. She didn't say who she was, what's it about?
What she wanted, yes.
So I rang it, and the voice answered. And after a couple of words, I thought, do you know, I think that's Joanna Lumley. And it was. And she was absolutely mad. Her closing comment in the first conversation on that car phone was, "Peter, I'll be with you to the end."
Really? That's brilliant.
And she meant it. Working with her was a lovely experience, very funny. She's a very funny lady, very moving because of her father's connection. I didn't know at the time that her father's life had been saved by one particular Gurkha
Wow.
called Tulbada Pun, who'd won the Victoria Cross. And she said to me, "There is one small thing you could do for me. I've heard about Tulbada Pun. I've got his photograph. My father gave it to me when I was a child and said, this is one of the bravest men that's ever lived. One day I'd like to meet him. Could you help me to meet Tulbada Pun?" And we did. The first day that Joanna joined the campaign.
Wow.
She did breakfast TV in TV Centre in London, and then we went by car to the High Court. And there was an enormous gathering of retired Gurkhas and their families, a sea of colour, a nervous gathering, anxious about how the case was going to go. They were thrilled that Joanna was there. It was one of my first experiences of mass media. I opened the car door to have it slammed back. I couldn't get out of the car because there were so many people pushing the car. And we had to form a protective ring round Joanna and walk up the High Court steps. Amazing. And if you can imagine hundreds of people pressing in, we had to fight our way up step by step. And on the top step, in his wheelchair, was Tulbada Pun.
Brilliant.
And she went towards him, and she had a small gift.
What emotional moment it must have been.
Yeah, she wanted to give this gift. She bent down to give the gift, and through his interpreter, Tulbada Pun said, "I remember your father. It's as if you're my daughter."
Wow.
Ooh, even now when I say that, you get that shiver. And there's a very famous picture, which I can show you on this jacket of this book.
That's the picture, yeah?
That is the picture where she wipes the tear from her eye.
Excellent. Peter, now I was just about to say, going on to the book. You wrote a book. The book was called Gurkha, The True Story of a Campaign for Justice, the book you just showed us. I mean, what made you want to write this book? I mean, obviously you must have had such an impact from the experience that you had of petitioning. I mean, what started off the idea of the book?
When I reflected on it, when we actually won the campaign and looked back over all the enormous struggle, the magnificent help from so many people, from Howe & Co, the solicitors, to the London taxi drivers who always chauffeured our VC winners around completely free of charge.
The support was massive, but is that because of the cause? Because it's something which was right, something which needed to be done?
I think for a particular part of the population, people who remember that their dads, granddads, uncles could talk about Gurkhas, they got it somewhere in their heart and their soul. They really felt this. So when I looked at that, I just thought this is something to record, because you never know, somebody someday in the future who's got a similar problem, who wants to change something, might think the odds are enormous, is it possible? And I hope they might just read this story and say, well, let's give it a go.
Good. And there you go, you heard it from Peter Carroll on the Inspiration Zone. Let's give it a go. You want to make a change, you want to do something, you want to achieve something, just go out there and give it a go.
Basildon and East Thurrock's brighter sound from the heart of Eastgate. Gateway 97.8.
It's that time again on the iZone, so sit back, buckle up and get ready for that motivational ride as we hear some of the greatest motivational speakers of our time, including Sylvester Stallone, Anthony Robbins and Les Brown, only on Gateway 97.8. Why Do We Fall? Motivational epic, only on Gateway 97.8. Peter Carroll is with us today, speaking about his journey as he challenged the British government in order to make a positive change and allow the Gurkhas the right to remain in the UK. Peter, back to your writing. We're on the Inspiration Zone, and if someone out there wants to write a book, but just can't get themselves motivated enough to take the first steps, what would your advice be to them, Peter?
Well, I can only say what I did, which is I sat down with a blank piece of paper in front of me, and I just thought, why do I want to tell this story? From my perspective, I wanted to do it because somebody somewhere might want that little bit of help, that bit of inspiration to take the first step to join a campaign or form a campaign. That's why I did it. So I think the first thing to do is why somebody needs to ask themselves, why do you want to write the book? Of course, there is that very cruel quip from somebody that everyone's got a good book inside them.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
But some people say it's best to leave it inside them. So you've got to make sure that your book's going to be relevant and appealing to other people. It's going to touch them. It's all about emotion, isn't it? It's about communicating, touching somebody else, making somebody else feel empowered to do something.
I mean, just there, that's the book that you've written, the Gurkha, just that little bit you told me there. I mean, that made a hair stand at the back of my neck about Joanna Lumley going down and meeting the Gurkha that helped her father. I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing stuff. And that's what you're talking about. Yeah, emotional. It's got to have that emotional pattern.
I mean, one of the other things that shook me to the core, had an enormous impact on me. Before Joanna was involved, before we'd really got the momentum building where we could win, I remember going to visit a Gurkha in Tunbridge, and he cried. And the sight of a Gurkha soldier, bravest of the brave, served all over the world. He'd done 22 years, I think. To see him in a one-bedroom, really poor conditioned flat, struggling,
that's not right.
Not allowed to work, looked me in the eye, and he cried. And I thought, that it's so shocking. And that's really the fuel after that. You think, it's not right, and it's not going to stand. We are going to change this. It's so distressing to see that I think you've worked with Gurkhas yourselves.
Yeah.
Well, now they're retired and working all over Britain. They are proud, they are dignified, they are tough people. And to see somebody like that, a British Army veteran,
who has fought for our country, put his life on the risk.
Fought in various theatres, had a long service and good conduct medal, but was being told that you're not allowed to live in Britain. I just, no, that's not right. That's not right, Peter. No. Peter, back to what you just said. I'm very close with the Gurkha community because where I work, the Tesco distribution centre in Thurrock, we have many Gurkhas who are part of the Tesco driving force. And as you just said, their work ethics are amazing. When I told them, Peter, and I got a little surprise for you, Peter, yeah? Oh.
When I told them that I was going to interview you, they all got together and asked me to forward a few messages from them to yourself. So the first one's from Nanda Limbu. He said, "Thank you for your great support. The Gurkha community is indebted to you forever." And Ajit Rai and his family said the message, "It is great to be part of this lovely nation, England. All thanks to you, Peter. Thank you very much." Peter, how do those messages make you feel, man?
They are, I suppose they could almost make me cry. They're amazing messages from amazing people. But what I would say is, I was privileged to be at the sort of focal point of this campaign, but there were so many other people who did so much. Howe and Co, everybody, Joanna. It was a huge amount of effort from all across the country. And my point would be that the real heroes in all of this are those guys that you've just been quoting. They're the people that are at the centre of this story. It's their own story and their fathers' and grandfathers' stories that are the inspiration. And I think probably my attempt to be a professional politician have been spectacularly unsuccessful. But I think
you tried.
I tried.
Yes,
I will take it to my grave that if I have helped them a bit, that was worth all my professional work.
Perfect.
To
Brilliant.
do that.
Excellent, Peter. Excellent.
Can I just tell you one story?
Yeah, go on, copy. Yeah.
When we actually won the campaign, we ended up going to Nepal. which was an amazing experience because I'd never been to Nepal.
I was just about to say, that must have been brilliant.
The original plan was to go to Nepal anyway. Even we didn't know we'd won when that was planned. It was going to be just myself, my wife, one retired Gurkha, and Joanna. We wanted to go to talk to the veterans who were in Nepal and wanted to come to Britain to say we hadn't given up on you and that we were still fighting. But because we won the campaign, the visit turned into much more of a celebration that we'd won, so we could go and give them the happy news. It was astonishing that the number of people that showed up. When we landed at the airport, I got a text message to say,
I was just about to say,
I'm really sorry we can't get there. And we thought, oh no, the small group of retired Gurkhas who wanted to come to meet Joanna, probably roadworks or something.
Yeah.
Actually, what happened was there were so many people at the airport, they shut it.
Oh man.
There were 3,500 retired Gurkhas.
Wow.
And I'll never forget the departure, or arrivals lounge as it was. The arrivals lounge doors opened, and I looked round, and suddenly thousands of people just rushed forward, swamped Joanna. I actually had to put my arms around her to protect her from actually being physically squashed. Wow. There was total mayhem. Amazing. Total mayhem. Amazing. But later on in that visit, and this is the link to the people, the messages, those very kind messages. We did a rally in one particular town in Nepal, and somebody forced their way to the front. They worm their way through, like children do at pop concerts and things. They squeeze between everybody, and this man got hold of both my hands and put both his hands around mine and said thank you. Oh, wow. And then was swept off into the crowd. And I said to one of the lawyers, I think it was Martin Howe from Howe & Co. I said, who was that? And he said, that was Gayendra Rai. Now, Gayendra Rai was in the Falklands and was severely injured by a piece of shrapnel from an Argentinian bomb. Split his back open. And his life was saved by a naval commander surgeon, Commander Jolly, who saved his life. But Gayendra Rai wasn't allowed to live in Britain, even though he was seriously disabled because of that injury. And apparently every day for 3 years he'd walked across Kathmandu to the British consul or embassy or whatever official office it was to say, I want to live in Britain. And he'd been declined. And that was him. Wow. So he actually held your hands and said thank you. Yeah. Wow. And when that happened, you think, I am glad we won this one, because that matters. And there you go, on the Inspiration Zone, Peter Carroll, that's what matters, making a difference. Don't just sit there and say to yourself, wait a minute, I know I can do that, but I'm not going to do it today, I'll leave it to another day. Make a difference, do it today.
More stuff about the area and loads of music.
Truly local radio for Basildon and East Thurrock. Gateway 97.8.
Thank you for joining me, Jag Singh, on the iZone, and our honourable guest today is the successful campaigner Peter Carroll, who fought for the rights for Gurkhas to reside in the United Kingdom. Peter, if someone out there, just like you did, stands back and notices that something just isn't right and fair and wants to start up a campaign, make things better, just like you did, will you be able to assist and advise these people on how to go about doing this, please? Yeah, I'm always interested in hearing what people are trying to do, what they're trying to solve. If people contact me, I can give them a bit of advice about how to do it, because whilst in our chat today we've understandably concentrated on the real emotional power of these campaigns and the messaging of these campaigns, there are certain things you've got to do. You've got to have a proper campaign plan. You've got to marshal your resources to communicate with the media. You've got to marshal your resources to communicate with the public. You've got to interact properly with politicians in a way that motivates them to support you. You may even have to consider what you might call official things, like we had a legal challenge going, but in smaller campaigns it might not be a legal challenge, but it might be representations to a council or a local authority or to one MP in particular. So as well as the power and the emotion, there's also the skill of putting together all the building blocks of a campaign, because just to go charging off towards the enemy might make you feel good, but you can actually get the legs taken out from under you. That's right, yeah. What you need to do is have both components. You've got to have a good cause, which you understand, which has an emotional resonance with people. It's a cause, yep. And then you've got to have the plan on all these building blocks of engagement with the things that matter: media, politicians, the public,
the law, authority, officialdom, and weave that together. The reason the campaign for the Gurkhas was so successful was it was like we were fighting on many fronts, and we whipped these things together. We had the media, which then fed off what we were doing in the courts, which then put pressure on the MPs, which meant that we could get more media, which meant more pressure on the MPs, which meant more media. It was like a firestorm. It was like a whirlwind. We got it to the point where one politician told me afterwards that when we won, the 5 most feared words in Westminster were "Joanna Lumley is in reception."
Really
Yeah.
are.
MPs got more handwritten correspondence about the Gurkhas than they did about the Iraq War.
Wow, that means you probably shook the government, you shook the media. That wait a minute, we're not just a passing thing here. We mean business.
Yes,
and we're not going to stop until it happens.
You couldn't move in Westminster without our campaign being. I don't like the expression "in your face," but I think it's a good description. It was there. It was on News at 10. It was in the newspaper. It was on the College Green outside the Houses of Parliament. It was on every radio broadcast, because we just drove it relentlessly and put more and more pressure, more and more fuel on the bonfire.
And eventually it went pop. There you go. That's it. You got.
I can still remember the time we knew we'd won, when the immigration minister asked to see Joanna Lumley, myself, and the lawyers, and he came to Joanna's house in southwest London and said, "The Prime Minister will see you tomorrow at 9:15."
Superb, brilliant, excellent.
But even that went wrong, because the taxi didn't show up. So we had to drive. My wife drove the car, my Audi, and we got stuck on Westminster Bridge. I had to jump out and run like hell.
Did you really?
As did Joanna. It was like, these films, like 4 Weddings and a Funeral. There's always a thing at the end where everybody's racing to get somewhere. Joanna actually shoulder charged a couple of commuters walking down Whitehall, and we got there with a minute to spare.
Yeah, but isn't that what you're saying there, getting out of the car, Westminster Bridge and running? I mean, inside, the passion must have been great.
Well, I actually said leg it. Just leg it.
We've got to get it. We've got to get there. Doesn't matter what happens, because we've done all this hard work. Now we're not going to let some traffic stop us. This is, like you said, just barge through, get there, no matter what happens. So, Peter, if there's anyone out there who wants to contact you for assistance, or for any campaign they have you got an email address or something they can contact you on?
It's really easy. It's peter@petercarroll.co.uk. There's 2 R's and 2 L's in Carroll.
Okay, so brilliant. Thank you very much.
peter@petercarroll.co.uk. Might not be able to do everything that people want, but I'll certainly try and help.
Give us advice, brilliant, because at the end of the day, Peter, I think you carry with yourself some great experience and knowledge that could help these people out there.
Your day, your say, your way. Basildon and East Thurrock's brighter sound. Gateway 97.8.
Okay, so Peter, recently a good ex-Gurkha friend of mine, Leela Gurung from Kent, has had his firstborn in this country. Now that means this child is born a British citizen. The first generation. This is all thanks to you and your team and the Gurkha Justice Campaign. How does this make you feel, Peter?
I have to say, it makes me feel quite wonderful, but again I emphasise it's not about me, it's about all the other people in the team, but mostly it's about that family. Remember that Gurkha that cried because he couldn't stay in Britain, and now you're going to see, and you do see, I mean, I live in Folkestone, I'm surrounded by serving Gurkhas who are actually still in the army, and many hundreds of retired Gurkhas, and they drive the taxis, they work in shops, some of them are very entrepreneurial, they've got businesses, they own restaurants, and I just look and think, that's just wonderful. That is what makes Britain Britain. The fact that they are now loved and welcome and contributing, and their diversity is adding colour and flavour, if you like, to our whole way of life, because they've done, and their ancestors have done, what is probably the most extraordinary thing possible. If you actually are prepared to put that uniform on and face that danger, that's the bond. The bonds are not written in the ink of immigration rules and regulations. It's about brotherhood and citizenship and a feeling of nation, and that's why I'm absolutely thrilled they're here. And while we're on the subject, I totally oppose the very few politicians who are still around who say, oh, it was wrong to let them come and they can't cope with this way of life, and it would have been far better if they stayed back in the poll. I find that really disappointing, and there are some MPs who do that.
Well, Peter, I like yourself, in Folkestone, I've got loads of Gurkhas around me, ex-Gurkhas, and they are loving it. They are loving the life. They're loving the rights they're getting. I mean, I had to explain to one of my workers what paternity leave was, and he didn't have a clue. And when I told him what it was like, wow, I get paternity leave, an ex-Gurkha, and it's like they're still learning the methods. But I'll tell you one thing, Peter, their work ethics are amazing, and are contributing towards the British nation. So just like yourself, I'm going to have to disagree with those MPs. I think these guys are great fighting force that will take our nation forward.
Yeah.
Basildon and East Thurrock's brighter sound from the heart of Eastgate. Gateway 97.8.
Peter, currently Donald Trump, he's been going around, shaking some heads and that. He's getting some attention out there. As an ex-politician, I mean, what is your impression of what Donald Trump is and whether he's going to be the president of the United States? I mean, what's your reaction on the Donald Trump?
I think he's a very clever man.
Okay.
I think he's possibly a very dangerous man.
Okay.
I think it's a symbol of the fact that people have got very fed up with what they regard as normal politicians. Okay. So my view is one of great concern, because I think he might win.
You think he might win? And when you say great concern, why is that, Peter?
Well, if I look inside my own mind and soul, I always believe that hope should always triumph over fear. I think there's more unites us than divides us, and I suspect that what Donald Trump is saying is not in accordance with that. This is a man who wants people to fear everybody else. He wants people to feel that they're great just because they're Americans. Let's make America great again. What does that mean? Does that mean big and powerful and crushing others, or does it mean evangelical, empowering people, making people feel good, developing nations? I just feel that he's tapped into that stream. You get a lot of people, I meet lots of people who say, I don't like politics, I don't like politicians, they're all the same, nothing can ever be changed. And actually, even though I rely on a lot of public support for my campaigns, I challenge that. I challenge people who might be listening to this. I say to them, do you feel that? Do you feel that nothing can ever be changed? Because if you do, you open the door to people like Donald Trump who just feed off that. To some extent, some UKIP politicians in Britain feed into that feeling of division and oppose. It's always the other guy's fault. Mm-hmm. Even the nationalists in Scotland, and the SNP does some wonderful work. Yeah. But at their heart is this idea of if we're separate and independent, we're better and stronger. And actually, I just think that everything about humanity says to me, we're actually better if we are together.
United as one?
Well, we are one human race. And even though human beings are complex and there's all sorts of problems and there's different cultures that clash, I think the more we get together, the stronger and happier more people will be than the fact that we just fracture and go our separate ways. It's a feeling. I have no logical argument to support that. It's just my feeling.
That's all I want, Peter. I just want your feeling, and thank you very much for that. If you just joined us, you listen to Gateway 97.8 FM with me, Jag Singh, and today we have Peter Carroll in the studios with us today, sharing his knowledge and experience. Peter, I'm now going to ask you the question that I love asking my guests. When you're out there campaigning and fighting the good fight, what's your drive, man? I mean, what just keeps you going? What's the passion behind the Peter Carroll that is sitting in front of me today?
Well, that's a great question. I answer this at some risk. I was born in a council house in a town near Manchester. It's called Stockport. And absolutely nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being born in a council house. I think we should have more of them.
I was as well.
But if you like, I was always the outsider. I was always the kid that, was very fortunate to get the chance, got a good education. I've lived an enormously interesting and fascinating life, but I'm just aware that sometimes people don't get those breaks.
Yeah.
They maybe don't have the loving family that I had. Maybe they don't have the chance of a great education that I had. And I look at those people and I think that's not their fault.
That's right.
You should always fight for the underdog. You should always give people... If they don't take it, then that's down to them. But I just have this feeling when people come to me who are struggling. When I met the Gurkhas, I'm not prepared to say, I'm just going to walk on the other side of the road. Because that's just not me.
Perfect, brilliant. I mean, like I said before, Peter, at the start of the interview, I said people in history, the history books show us that people sat back and said, wait a minute, this isn't right. And they didn't only just sit back and say this isn't right. They made a difference.
Can I share one of my favourite quotes of all time?
Go on.
It's from a lady called Margaret Mead, who I understand was an American who studied human nature. I think is the posh word for it, anthropologist. And she had this quote, and it was said, "Some people say that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. In reality, that's all that ever does change the world."
Brilliant, excellent.
And listening to this radio show, there'll be small groups of committed citizens.
And why not? Why not? You can make a difference. Like I said, Peter, there's people in the past who've made the history books, like Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa. These people sat back and thought, wait a minute, this isn't right. This isn't acceptable. We need to do something. And then they were on fire. Peter, you was on fire with the Gurkhas. You got your mission. And me and the Gateway 97.8 studios are going to give you full support with your oncoming campaign.
Basildon and East Thurrock's brighter sound from the heart of Eastgate. Gateway 97.8.
So, okay, Peter, as I said, thank you so much for coming down today. For those of you out there who are interested in Peter's story, and you can purchase his book, Gurkha, The True Story of a Campaign for Justice, available on the internet. Peter truly believed that something wasn't right and fair. He made a stand and challenged the government and fought for the right for the Gurkhas who were fighting for our very own country, to be able to reside in our country, the UK. Eventually, Peter, Joanna and their team were victorious and the laws came into place. Peter, when I say this, I'm sure I speak for every Gurkha community out there around the globe. Thank you for making a difference to their lives for betterment. I'd like to thank you all for joining me and Peter Carroll on the iZone today. You may follow me on YouTube and Twitter at jagsing_ICAN. Until the next time, keep yourself motivated and inspired.